Is there any other question? Yes, please identify yourself and probably direct the question.
Je vous remercie. Mon nom c'est Mamadou Nadia, je suis du... Mon nom c'est Mamadou Nadia, je suis du ministère de l'Environnement du Burkina Faso. Alors je ne voulais pas du tout intervenir à ce débat, mais lorsque les questions des changements climatiques viennent en ligne de compte, je me sens obligé de parler. Quand on était à Rio, la question de l'économie verte a failli ne pas ressortir dans les actes de la conférence, parce que lorsqu'on prend des exemples autour de l'économie verte, on voit la réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre, la réduction des polluants. Alors, les pays en développement se sont dit, est-ce que ce n'est pas une façon détournée d'affecter des obligations de réduction aux pays en développement? Il faut que les PIB soient verts, il faut que toutes les autres activités soient réverdies, et c'était en fait une conception peut-être erronée, mais peut-être également à dessein, d'allouer des engagements chiffrés de réduction de certains pays en développement. Donc ça a failli échouer à Rio. Alors il est bon vraiment qu'on resitue les choses dans leur contexte. Ça c'est un. Deuxièmement, le Fonds vert pour le climat va adresser les questions d'atténuation et les questions d'adaptation. Et aujourd'hui, avec déjà ce qu'ils appellent le fast start, les financements précoces, plus de 75% des financements qui viennent des pays développés partent du côté de l'atténuation, alors que l'adaptation est la priorité essentielle des pays en développement. Le groupe des 77 l'a réitéré, le groupe africain également. Alors, si on part de ce point de vue, le Fonds vert pour le climat, dont certains en ont parlé ici, c'est pour continuer de défendre les intérêts vraiment d'un certain nombre de groupes, notamment les pays développés qui disent qu'il faut faire de l'atténuation. Alors aujourd'hui, on parle un peu de la solidarité. C'est ressorti dans plusieurs présentations des panélistes, la coopération internationale, le partenariat international. Alors est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, prenant l'exemple seulement de la question des changements climatiques, on pense véritablement qu'il y a un partenariat international pour aider les pays pauvres qui subissent les effets des changements climatiques? Et quelqu'un en a parlé tout à l'heure. Alors voilà un peu la question que je pose, la préoccupation, le commentaire que je fais. Il y a...
Can you be brief, please?
Yes, sir. Il y a un peu au niveau international qu'on joue avec des règles différentes le même jeu. Et ça devient difficile. Si les pays développés, connaissant les problèmes des pays en développement, ne commencent pas à changer un peu de mentalité, de façon de voir, ce fossé-là va toujours exister. C'est pourquoi chaque groupe de nations, chaque pays devrait voir comment essayer de développer à sa manière l'économie verte afin de booster en tout cas le développement dans sa nation ou dans sa sous-région. Merci.
Thank you. I think it is quite long. I think we will be able to respond from the panelists or...
Please. Chair. Can I get a few more responses to my questions? While they're at it. It's all the same thing.
I think I just pick up the essence of this very useful intervention actually. It actually brought in the concerns which have been highlighted by other friends out here. It does talk about the equity issue. It does talk about where is the emphasis lying. And you talk about this climate fund where 75% of it goes for the mitigation. So where is this, whose priority is the mitigation? I think these are the issues which I think are very valid, which have been raised. Also, I think a very useful point has been raised here is about how you define green economy. And I think this is a common thread which we all have found here is the definition of green economy by itself is very, very elusive. I think, and this is good in a way, because each country looking at its own context should be able to define the green economy what green means to them. Because somebody said, we do not have economy, what to talk about the green? Even that is an extreme case. So I think there is, Dr. Krishna, I think you should be happy with that, because you have kept the debate alive. And it's very important, because there cannot be a straight-jacketed definition of a green economy, the way it probably was intended. So it's good. So I think you're looking at the context, you're looking at the strengths, you're looking at the limitations which are also brought to the play before you define. But quickly, I think I'll just say, again, I think building on what our very distinguished panelists have said, this, I mean, developed and developing countries' perception on green economy has been different. Who's emphasizing the environmental agenda, and who's emphasizing the equity and the growth agenda. And having said this, I again think of the presentation that I made, started with this ethos. In fact, the developing nations had such a huge biocultural ethos where the sustainability was built in. And then, something happened. And in fact, it's much more easier for us to revitalize, to bring back some of those elements and define the way we want to define our green economy. So I think there is this common thread, but a couple of things which also are very quickly then, technology is one of the major issues. But when you talk about technology, I think we also talk about there is a huge repository of traditional wisdom and knowledge and traditional technologies. On that we build the other technologies. So I think that on one side you have the people-led technologies, but on the other side you also have state-of-art technology. And the blending of these two, I think, is very important as you drive the agenda of sustainable development in the context. Thanks.
Very quickly, we are with the time. Yeah. Yes.
With your permissions, okay.
Yeah, please.
Well, I totally agree with you, because Korea is the one good example, because Korea's economy has been suffered from a brown economy for the last long time. That's why we have changed our paradigm from brown economy to a green economy. Well, to develop the green economy, we need fund and technical assistance. Absolutely. That's why the global community agreed to set up the global green climate fund, a green climate fund. So Korea would like to host a secretariat for GCF. Why? Because Korea is a unique country in the world to transform from donor respond country to donor country, aid donor country. So Korea would like to play a bridging role between developed and developed countries. So we'll continue to work closely with developing countries to sort out the problem and to figure out the problem and to map out our green project.
Professor Jiang.
So can you hear? Oh yes, okay. I just want to add some comments on the climate change. Indeed, as it's getting warmer, it's reports from everywhere. But however, as a scientist, I know the temperature fluctuates in history. The Earth were in Ice Age, and because it was quite warm, and we might slide into another Ice Age. So to me, the global warming, is not probably just something is likely to happen. 50 to 50 chance. I'm not fully convinced. But however, we can use it as a slogan, as excuse to say, we must take action if it's too warm, or there will be no some problem like the glacier will come and there will be less water and there will be drought somewhere, and somewhere we get too much rain. So anyway, we need something, so we can take action, and so we can work together. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Professor Jiang. Now we are right, coming to the time actually, and I would like to request for the chair to give the key message and how should we go ahead, and then we will be completed. Thank you, chair.
Thank you, Isimot, for giving me this easy task of chairing the session and trying to recapitulate and sort of wrap up the discussion that we have had. This has been quite an enriching discussion, and I have been greatly benefited as someone who is involved in policy formulation in the ministry. I think, I was going through the discussion preceded by the presentations by 3 presenters, and something came up to my mind. Somebody was talking about the buzzword, and then I was looking for a buzz letter, buzz alphabet, and I came across the alphabet C today. Dr. Rathore was highlighting cultural ethos, which really are important, not only for the region of South Asia and this part of the world, Southeast Asia or East Asia, but for the whole world, because our ancestors were not full. Our forefathers were not just ignorant. That we have to acknowledge. We have to start from believing that whatever had been done in the past was not for the loss of humanity. Rather, it was for the benefit of humanity. But since the pace of development took faster, than what they had imagined, now we are facing this great situation. So this cultural dimension, which has been highlighted by various speakers, various presenters, including the madam from Bangladesh, is very important. Actually, when we start our day and when we wrap up our day at night, we just think of what we were taught by our forefathers to do. In our culture, actually he mentioned about the Vedic culture of the Oriental or Eastern part of the world, coming from this Oriental philosophy. We have to greet the sun. We have to offer water to the plants, and we have to do a great internalized worshipping to the nature. So great amount of respect we offer to the nature. We call nature a mother. So this thing, if we really believe in, and if we put this belief into practice, then many things can happen. There is this program is organized by Isimot, which is focusing on mountain issues and mountain development. So just one thing I would like to tell you about. There is one great poet whose name is Kalidas. He wrote in Sanskrit. He wrote many epics and he wrote many poems. He's really a great poet. And in one book, in one epic, he describes Himalaya as the soul of the god, Devatatma. He says, Astut Tarasyam Dishi Devatatma, Himalayo Nama Nagadiraja. Devatatma means, that's a Sanskrit word, and that means the very soul of the divinity, very soul of the god and the goddess. So this is what Himalayas are. This is what mountains are. And when we are talking about this sustainable development, and when you are raising the issues of water, food security, that comes from the mountain-based agricultural system. And when we talk about biodiversity, when we talk about cultural identity and cultural diversity of the people living in Himalayas, we have to believe that Himalayas are not only a sort of physical entity, they do carry a spiritual dimension, they do carry a soul, and that links us. If we establish a linkage between these very seemingly physical entities and the human beings, which are of course not only the physical entities but the spiritual entities, then something can happen on sustainable development. So I will start with that C of cultural ethos. The next C is collective wisdom, that has been highlighted by our colleague RBS Rawat. That collective wisdom has to take place, because it's not a question of something being done in Korea, or something not being done in India or in Nepal. It's a planet. It's a globe. It's an earth. So we have to take responsibility for doing good and doing bad in our individual respective capacities, but in keeping with the challenges that we have to collectively face, and that brings us together, to come to a point where we can have this, collective action based on collective wisdom. So I like that point very much. The other C is, community-based natural resources management. That is also very, very important. That brings, a very good point home. And it's not a collection of words. It's something that we really have to, put into practice. Because communities are the people, or the very people who actually are the repository of knowledge. Not only the knowledge, wisdom. I would go even further. They are the repository. They have immense treasure of wisdom. We have to acknowledge, we have to recognize, and we have even to replicate that wisdom. So-called this knowledge and skill transfer from developed to developing world, or even to the least developing world. I mean, of course, technology is there, and the skills and the knowledge, as long as they have some linkage with technology is concerned, they also need to be imported. But as long as the very core of knowledge, which comes from wisdom, is concerned, our people are more wisdomatic than the people who are so-called educated people. So that thing needs to be highlighted. The other thing is commitment to implement. That was highlighted by Dr. Deuba, who was very forthcoming to stress on the fact that whatever policy is done, made, if it is not implemented, nothing will happen. And the other thing is also C, and that is clean energy. That had been highlighted by Director General, Mr. Han. This clean energy or renewable energy, or whatever we call it, Secretary General of the United Nations, who happens to be from Korea, he says sustainable energy for all initiative by 2030. Sustainable means clean for us. It doesn't deserve to be dirty. Of course, some sources are there apart from the very distinct, clean energy sources like water. But it's, after all, it eventually has to be clean. So this clean energy initiative is a cornerstone of what green economy, how green economy can be implemented in practice. And the other thing is, which is equally important, is this the message needs to be brought to the people in a clear and comprehensible way. I think that is something which I picked from Dr. Chiang's from Chinese Academy of Science. The message has to be very clear and comprehensible. Whatever otherwise, this seems to be, one of the speakers said, one of the speakers from the floor said, this otherwise might be a jungle of terminologies. We are lost in terminology. In the field of climate change, in the field of so many jargons are jumbled up, and the core meaning gets lost somewhere. So the message has really to be brought down to a clear and a comprehensible extent, and that is something I think Ishimoto is supposed to do. So that was a very good point brought home by the participants. And the other thing I noted from the deliberations is another C, and that is cut the consumption, whatever it is called. It's sustainable consumption and production in literature. Cut the consumption. Yesterday, we had a very good, lively discussion in the World Leaders Dialogue, and some of the questions were asked about changing the ethics of development, especially in terms of changing the pattern and tendency of food consumption. So much waste, is produced because of the irrational, food consumption behavior of the consumers. So these things also need to be considered very seriously. So cut the consumption, but that cutting consumption things should not come out as a dictation from the developed countries to the developing or the least developed countries. We know where to set the boundary. We know, or we should be able to know where to draw the line. Simply, asking us at this point of stage of development in our countries, simply asking us like developed countries that you should cut the consumption now. We should not be able to produce. You should not be able to move forward in development. Would not work. That we want to say. So that's a very clear message. I think we should need to bring home. The other thing which has been highlighted by the speakers were about the obvious 3 pillars of Rio+20. Of course, the green economy was the cornerstone of this Rio+20 summit. The document came out with the name of the future we want, and some people were saying, no, this is not enough. This should